drops to the greatest hits. This is Trash Can Tidbits.
Hey everybody, I'm your Trash Can Tidbit giving host, Beaton, and I'm bringing you the fun, pop culture stuff you've come to expect from me. Last time, I asked the question, what was the second Agatha Christie book to be based on true events? The answer is The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side. Published in 1962, the plot involves Christie's elderly sleuth, Miss Marple, investigating a murder that occurs during the filming of a movie in her small English village. It's revealed that the movie's leading actress, Marina Rudd, is recovering from a devastating incident from years earlier where a young fan, infected with German measles, aka rubella, broke quarantine to see Rudd making a personal appearance, kissing her in gratitude. Rudd, who was pregnant at the time, became infected and eventually gave birth to a mentally disabled child who had to be institutionalized. The same thing happened to actress Jean Tierney in 1943, who also contracted the same disease from a contagious fan and gave birth to a disabled child who was also institutionalized. The incident left Tierney struggling with depression for many years, and while she continued to make movies, she remained traumatized by the incident and her own struggles with mental illness. Agatha Christie used this incident as the basis for her story. Now with that settled, let's get started with fact number 1. Did you know that Anne Hathaway's real father plays her character's father in The Princess Diaries? The film, released in 2001, which was also Hathaway's movie debut, has her playing a nerdy teenager named Mia who finds out of nowhere that she's a princess, the daughter of the deceased Crown Prince Philippe Rinaldi of the fictional country of Genovia. Anne's real father, Gerald Hathaway, appears in the film as Philippe, in photographs and a brief flashback sequence of him writing a note to her, which is read out in voiceover. However, it's not Gerald's voice we hear reading the note. The reading was done by legendary voice and character actor René Auberjonois, best known for playing Odo on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, as well as the voice of Chef Louis in Disney's The Little Mermaid, who sang the song Les Poissons. Bonus fact, while Gerald Hathaway is not a professional actor, Anne's mother, Kate, is. She played Fantine in the first American national tour of Les Miserables, a role that Anne would end up playing years later in the 2012 film. Fact 2. Did you know that the game The Secret of Monkey Island has a sneaky jab at earlier adventure games? Prior to LucasArts being founded, the game company Sierra Online released a slew of adventure games like King's Quest and Space Quest, which had a large variety of hilarious ways for players to die in-game and mock them at the same time. It is nearly impossible to die in The Secret of Monkey Island, and the game has a self-aware joke at Sierra Online's expense. At one point, the game's protagonist, Guybrush Threepwood, appears to fall off a cliff and you get a game over screen saying, "You should have saved the game," only to have him pop right back up and simply saying, "Rubber tree." The only way to die for real in the game refers back to Guybrush saying that he can hold his breath for 10 minutes. There's a point where he's chained to a statue and pushed into the harbor. If you actually wait for 10 minutes, he will in fact drown, and you have to reload a previous save file. But let's be real, you really wouldn't want to do that, would you? Fact 3. Did you know that the stage musical The Phantom of the Opera was originally going to feature more special effects, including the use of some mechanical animals? For example, the title song of the show features the Phantom and Christine descending through the catacombs of the opera house to his underground lair. The show's creators originally wanted to use both a mechanical horse for Christine to ride on and rats with glowing red eyes to be running around. Both effects ended up not being used because they looked way too fake. One animal effect they did attempt to try for the original tech rehearsals was the use of real doves flying across the stage during the song All I Ask of You, which took place on the opera house's rooftops. The birds unfortunately got disoriented, and some of them actually flew either into the theater walls or into the auditorium. As a result, no animals, real or otherwise, are in the show. Some more elaborate magic sequences, such as the Phantom using sleight of hand tricks and disappearing acts with puffs of smoke, were also attempted with the use of a stage illusionist consultant, but were ultimately abandoned. The one effect that did make it in the show that is worth mentioning was at the very end, when the Phantom pulls a blanket over himself while sitting in his chair. The blanket is then pulled back, revealing only his mask. Fact 4 comes from my friend Teo Drohan. Did you know that with the recent announcement of Zootopia 2 and the reveal of a new character with Gary the Snake, there's a touch of irony regarding the actor who will be playing him? Ke Huy Quan, who won a well-deserved Oscar for his role in Everything Everywhere All at Once, made his film debut playing Short Round in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Now, the character Indiana Jones hates snakes, and he actually gets scared by one in the movie itself. Ironically, while Key has played alongside a character who hates snakes, he'll be playing one himself in Zootopia 2. Thanks for that fact, Rohan. Fact 5. Did you know that the enemy targeting system in the 3D Legend of Zelda games was inspired by samurai fighting? In Japanese cinema, chanbara is a term referring to samurai fighting seen in classic films like Seven Samurai and Yojimbo, among many others. It would involve the hero taking on a group of enemies one at a time, targeting a specific one, attacking, moving on to the next enemy, and so on, sometimes even strafing around to get a better position to attack, and often performing acrobatic maneuvers too. The producers of Zelda wanted to try this as far back as Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, but the technology wasn't as advanced as it should have been at the time for 2D games that featured sword fighting. It wasn't until a visit to a Japanese theme park which featured actors enacting a Chanbara-style sword fight that the idea of Z-targeting was first implemented for Ocarina of Time. Each 3D Zelda game since has utilized some form of Z-targeting because of this amazing style of Japanese sword fighting. Fact 6. Did you know that Super Mario Kart was not the first racing game that Mario was in? It wasn't even a kart racer either. 1987's Famicom Grand Prix F1 Racing was a Japanese exclusive game for the Famicom Disk System. It was a top-down Formula 1 style racing game where you choose either a solo mode or championship mode where you can race against computer-controlled opponents who all happen to look like Mario. Since the game is based on real F1 racing, you can take a pit stop for fuel and vehicle repairs. The pit crew is also made up entirely of Mario lookalikes. The game was never released in the United States, but it is considered to be the first racing game to star Mario. Of course, Mario Kart reigns supreme in Nintendo's racing department these days. Fact 7. Did you know that the gun barrel sequence that has been an integral part of every James Bond film was inspired by a movie released all the way back in 1903? The silent film The Great Train Robbery was a 12-minute feature-length back in those days, released in the early 20th century about a gang of outlaws that robs a moving train, flees across some mountainous terrain, and are finally killed by a posse. Not a very original premise though, in my opinion, but it was considered one of the first films with a story which was relatively new at the time. The final shot of the movie features a medium shot of actor Justice D. Barnes firing a gun into the camera. This may have inspired designer Maurice Binder of Eon Productions almost 50 years later to create the original gun barrel sequence that has become part of every James Bond movie. Coincidentally, Sean Connery, the first actor to play Bond, would later star in an unrelated movie called The Great Train Robbery, released in 1978. Fact 8. Did you know that two action movies of the mid-2000s once shared the same tagline? Transformers, released in 2007, had the tagline, "Their War, Our World." At one point, 2004's Alien vs. Predator also had the same tagline, but flipped around as "Our World, Their War." Both films feature two warring extraterrestrial races fighting their intergalactic battles and have taken each of them to Earth, where humanity gets caught in the middle. For whatever reason, the tagline for AVP was changed to "Whoever wins, we lose." Was it possible that AVP later got wind of Transformers' tagline a few years later and changed it then? Well, maybe. 2007 would also have a sequel to AVP called Aliens vs. Predator Requiem, which again had a very similar tagline, among several others, to Transformers. It went, "It began on their world, it will end on ours." Coincidence? Fact 9. Did you know that not only did singer David Bowie get tons of shoutouts in the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise, but there were plans to have him cameo at one point? Bowie had no problems licensing his song Moon Age Daydream for the first movie soundtrack. The soundtrack album was propelled to the top of the Billboard Hot 100s chart, in part by the song's inclusion and all the other classic songs that appear in it. The series' writer-director James Gunn was even considering giving him a cameo in the second movie. Sadly, Bowie passed away in 2016 before Gunn was able to ask him. Guardians 3 pays tribute to him nevertheless. The Guardians' original ship was named the Milano after actress Alyssa Milano, Star-Lord's childhood crush. The newer ship is called the Bowie. Fact 10. Did you know that Hugh Jackman really is the saving grace for Deadpool and Wolverine having been made at all? Jackman had announced his retirement from the role after the movie Logan had been released in 2017. The first Deadpool movie came out the year before in 2016. Somewhere in the back of Jackman's mind, however, said that he never really wanted to retire from the role, and after seeing the first Deadpool movie and Deadpool 2, he regretted his decision. Meanwhile, while Jackman was getting his singing and dancing chops back on for The Greatest Showman and the Broadway revival of The Music Man, Disney had bought 20th Century Fox, meaning that all future X-Men projects would be made under the Marvel Cinematic Universe banner, including Deadpool appearances. Ryan Reynolds was having trouble coming up with the treatment for a third Deadpool movie and was considering abandoning it altogether. Then, out of the blue, as the Music Man revival was coming to an end, Jackman himself gave Ryan a call and said he wanted to play Wolverine again, and the concept and story took over from there. So, in a nutshell, while Deadpool himself says he is Marvel Jesus, I say Hugh Jackman is the real savior here. Nothing against you though, Ryan. And here's today's trivia question. The first Matrix movie is still an iconic classic even 25 years after its original release. Well, 25 years, can you believe that? And it still holds up extremely well, especially the special effects. Anyway, one character I'd like to talk about is Switch, one of Morpheus' allies, who is also well known for her androgynous appearance, in that she could either look male or female. While she does meet a grisly end in the movie, her impact left quite an impression on the two writers-directors who were biologically male at the time, but are now known as Lana and Lily Wachowski. My question to you is, true or false? The Wachowskis originally wrote Switch to be transgender. And there we go for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and definitely stay tuned for more fun stuff. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell to be notified for future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.